This is Mac OS Ken.
A scary exploit is hacking away at iPhones. iPhone sales defy gravity in China. And Apple casts its gaze towards WWDC. It is Friday, the 20th of March, 2026. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Clean My Mac, keeping Macs clean since 2008. Try 7 days free and use my code MacOSKen20 for 20% off at clnmy.com/MacOSKen. This show is also sponsored by NordLayer, working to secure your network and block threats to your business. Sounds like a heavy lift. New equipment, tons of money. Yeah, you don't need either of those with NordLayer. It brings VPN, access control, and threat protection to your team starting at just $8 per user per month. Yes, on the equipment they're already using. NordLayer is a layer of protection that works with the gear you've already got. That's desktops, laptops, tablets, and smartphones across every major platform. And they're getting stronger all the time. NordLayer has partnered with CrowdStrike to bring Falcon endpoint protection to small and mid-sized businesses. That is your business getting enterprise-grade security that is simple to deploy and manage. They've got special pricing for teams with 100 seats or more and an exclusive offer for macOS Ken listeners. Get up to 22% off NordLayer yearly plans plus 10% on top with offer code MacOSKen-10-NordLayer at nordlayer.com/MacOSKen. Try it risk-free with their 14-day money-back guarantee. NordLayer, toggle-ready network security built for your business. Get savings on top of savings with offer code MacOSKen-10-NordLayer at nordlayer.com/MacOSKen. If you've been putting off recent OS updates for your iPhone, you should not. I told you last week about updates Apple issued for iOS and iPadOS 15 and 16. Those were meant to address Karuna, an exploit that strung together multiple vulnerabilities to take advantage of iPhones running older operating systems. Now, it has happened again. Engadget ran a piece earlier this week about a newly discovered exploit called DarkSword, spotted by Google, Lookout, and iVerify. The piece says DarkSword is a fileless hack that leverages a collection of exploits to access sensitive data when an iPhone visits an infected website. Rather than install spyware that hangs around on a user's phone after messages and other private information are stolen, fileless hacks like DarkSword take control of the legitimate processes in an iPhone's operating system to steal data, according to a piece from Wired. The data being stolen is truly sensitive, said by Engadget to include passwords, messages, iCloud content, and crypto wallets. On top of that, DarkSword deletes any evidence it was running on an iPhone after it finishes stealing information, according to the report. The good news, a piece from TechCrunch says DarkSword is only known to have been wielded by Russian hackers against iPhone users in Ukraine. The bad news, there seems little to no reason it couldn't happen elsewhere. Like here, wherever your here happens to be. The fact that it didn't happen elsewhere implies some restraint in what could have otherwise been a wide-scale hacking campaign targeting users worldwide, according to TechCrunch. And you probably wouldn't even know it had happened to you because of the way it cleans up after itself. So what can you do? Well, keep your operating system up to date. That includes old operating systems, which may mean leaving those old operating systems behind. Mac Rumors ran a piece on the issue on Thursday that had Apple warning users about the recent exploits. If you have kept your iPhone software up to date, says Apple, then you are already protected. The company points out that it did release updates for iOS 15 and 16 last week. Those would be the Corona fixes we talked about, though they apparently blunt DarkSword as well. And if you're running further back than that, time to catch up. According to Apple, devices with iOS 13 or iOS 14 must update to iOS 15 to receive these protections. They'll receive an additional alert to install a critical security update in the next few days. So far, this year's smartphone sales through Lunar New Year in China have been gangbusters for Apple and crap for everybody else. That is the indication from Counterpoint Research. For the first 9 weeks of the year, according to the firm, iPhone sales were up 23% versus the same period a year ago. That growth was said to be supported by e-commerce discounts in China, as well as government subsidies for which the base iPhone 17 qualified. As for the rest of the market, smartphone sales were down 4% versus the same 9 weeks a year ago. While they did a bit better over the Lunar New Year holiday, sales for that were still down 2% versus the previous Lunar New Year period. Seems that Chinese consumers just weren't that into Chinese phones. According to Counterpoint, although government subsidies were introduced at the beginning of the year, market performance over the first 2 months suggests their impact has been limited, with overall demand remaining weak. And sales are not expected to get a lot better anytime soon. I could ask if you know why, but that would be insulting your intelligence at this point. It's Ragnarok.
Ramageddon. The Rampocalypse.
Looking ahead, says the firm, China's smartphone market is expected to remain under pressure from March to May, though some improvement could emerge in early June thanks to 618 shopping promotions. The memory cost surge is likely to persist through 2026, forcing smartphone OEMs to make difficult trade-offs between costs, margins, and shipment targets. Brands relying on entry-level models to drive market share will face a significant risk of short-term losses. Now for Apple, it's nothing but a thing. With its strong control over the supply chain, Counterpoint says Apple is well positioned to weather the current memory crisis. While Android OEMs are signaling price increases, Apple is unlikely to follow suit, instead absorbing part of the margin pressure and using the situation to potentially expand its market share. See also Huawei, but in a different way. Counterpoint says it can also take a bit of turbulence thanks to its heavy reliance on domestic suppliers in China. Huawei will probably use current conditions to grab more share in the low to mid-end segment, according to the firm. AppleCare 1 may be hitting the EU soon. Mac Rumors says a trademark for the subscription service was registered with the European Union Intellectual Property Office the 19th of March. Interestingly, the report is careful to not say the service is hitting the EU, only that it probably is. On its own, the piece says the filing is not confirmation of a launch date for EU markets, but trademark registrations of the sort have typically preceded expanded rollouts of Apple services. The EU IP office says the trademark application has been accepted. It now has to be assigned to an examiner. Apple has widened its developer reach. 9to5Mac ran a piece earlier this week that had the Cupertino company opening 2 accounts labeled Apple Developer. One was for the Chinese video sharing platform Bilibili, with the other putting in work on LinkedIn. Currently, the piece says the content on the Bilibili account focuses on WWDC 25 and iOS 26 technologies. That said, WWDC 26 is probably just under 3 months away. 9to5Mac sees both of the new developer accounts as Cupertino prepping for this year's developer conference. Speaking of developers, congrats to the developers behind a few apps aimed at the NCAA's March Madness. Another piece from 9 to 5 Mac says those apps have traveled into the App Store top 10, toppling the dominance of AI apps. Perennial favorite ChatGPT has been elbowed out of the top spot. In fact, as of last night, 3 of the top 5 apps were sports apps. They ran NCAA March Madness live in first, CBS Sports app, Scores and News in second, ChatGPT is number 3, Claude by Anthropic is fourth, and ESPN Tournament Challenge rounds out the top 5. The real question, can this trend continue? I'm going to go with no, since March Madness is mostly a March thing. It's crazy. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Clean My Mac, your solution for care and control of your Mac. I mentioned earlier this week that Clean My Mac helps you get rid of apps you don't use. Why do you need help for that? Just drag it to the trash bin and be done, right? Well, no. Applications don't just live in the Applications folder. Parts are installed all over your Mac. That's great for making the apps run better, but kind of a pain when what you want is all of those parts gone. Clean My Mac makes them go away. It clears leftover data and hidden files that are just taking up space and slowing down your machine. That plus other features make Clean My Mac the tool for controlling, optimizing, and maintaining your Mac. Find out for yourself and get tidy today. Try 7 days free and use my code MacOSKen20 for 20% off at clnmy.com/MacOSKen. Make macOSKen all caps in both cases. That way they know where you heard about it and you get the discount. Try 7 days free and use my code MacOSKen20 for 20% off at clnmy.com/MacOSKen. Again, macOSKen is all caps, both places. Use code MacOSKen20 for 20% off at clnmy.com/MacOSKen. Apple's being sued over something it says it didn't do. A piece from Apple Insider says Chicken Soup for the Soul, LLC, is suing Apple, Meta, XAI, Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, Perplexity, and NVIDIA for training their respective artificial intelligence offerings on Chicken Soup content. But not directly. The piece has Chicken Soup for the Soul arguing that the companies are all in violation of copyright thanks to training their respective artificial intelligence tools on a dataset known as the Pile. That's a dataset said by Apple Insider to be filled with proprietary content. The thing is, Apple didn't use the Pile to train Apple Intelligence, though the company did use the Pile. According to the report, Cupertino researchers used the dataset for an open source project called OpenELMs, which was published publicly and never used for Apple Intelligence. It's unclear whether that's the reason Apple's included in the case. Apple Insider figures the case will have to be pared down to remove the iPhone maker, at the very least. Another departure from Apple's ranks, Mac Rumors ran a piece earlier this week that had Brian Lynch, senior director on Apple's home hardware engineering team, giving up that title. Citing a report from Bloomberg, the piece says Lynch is leaving for smart ring maker Oura, where he'll serve as VP of hardware engineering. You know that whole thing about people with more dollars than cents? Say hello to the Paddock line of wireless chargers from Hermès. Unlike the iPhone 17 Pro Max, though, these are actually Hermès and priced accordingly. Apple Insider says the Paddock Duo charger can charge 2 devices, say an iPhone and an Apple Watch at once. The Paddock Solo can charge 1 device, say an iPhone or an Apple Watch maybe. Now you can buy those on your own, or you can buy them with a case. Those cases have room for their respective chargers when not in use. There's also room for the necessary USB-C cable, but you'll find it necessary to buy a USB-C cable. They're not just giving stuff away here. Available in saddle-stitched gold Swift calfskin, a piece from Mac Rumors says the Paddock Solo will run buyers $1,250. The Paddock Duo will cost $1,750. Throw in a case and you are seriously piling on the bucks. A Solo with a case costs $3,725, while a Duo with a case costs $5,150. They're available to order directly from Hermès. If you get one, though, do me a favor. Never tell me you got one of these. I don't want to spend the rest of my life telling you everything you could have bought instead. If you're an Overcast user, you'll be able to say along with your favorite podcast soon. A piece from 9 to 5 Mac says the popular podcast app is adding episode transcripts. While Apple Podcasts has had those for a while, Overcast seems to be one-upping the Apple offering. Its transcripts will include private feed podcasts, including members-only episodes. The transcripts in Apple Podcasts are limited to free episodes available in Apple's podcast directory. I assume Overcast is transcribing the paid content on the fly. Notes tied to the app say if a user plays an episode that isn't transcribed yet, it can be transcribed right on the iPhone, provided the phone's running some version of iOS 26. Other features on the way include live scrolling of transcripts during playback, tap to seek on any line of text, and music detection. If you're a regular user of Overcast, there is no point in looking for these features just yet. They're only available for Overcast beta testers right now. No word on when the public update is expected. And finally today, word of another celebration of Apple's 50th anniversary not put on by Apple. 9 to 5 Mac says the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, California has announced TechFest Happy Birthday Apple. Geared for the whole family, not just the gearheads. The event description invites would-be attendees to get hands-on with vintage Apple computers from Retro Roadshow, create Apple-themed party hats, dance to 50 years of hits, play Pin the iPod, and more. Plus, meet early Apple employee Daniel Kotke, who will show off a replica Apple One computer that can run ChatGPT. Sure, but can it run March Madness apps? Scheduled for next Saturday, the 28th of March, tickets for the all-day event run between $6.50 and $21.50, depending on age and affiliation. Admission is free for kids 7 and under. More info is available on the Computer History Museum site. macOS Ken, brought to you by me, and sponsored by NordLayer, toggle-ready network security built for your business. Get savings on top of savings with offer code macOSken-10-NordLayer at nordlayer.com/macOSken. This show is also sponsored by Clean My Mac. Try 7 days free and use my code macOSken20 for 20% off at clny.com/macOSken. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can find me on Mastodon, macOSken at mastodon.social, You can also send me an email, info@macosken.com. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.